Hey everybody, Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor and pleasure of catching up with our friend Eric Bass. Yay!
Hey man, how you doing?
Doing super, Eric. How about you?
I am better than I deserve to be.
There you go.
Very, very blessed.
Excellent. Well, many of you will remember that Eric and I had a great conversation back in 2018, and it has been an absolute whirlwind of stuff happening since 2018.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Man, I mean, we were talking about attention, and all of the themes, and there was enough going on even then where the points and the issues that were at hand, how we should be treating each other, and we're all human, and all of those things. Fast forward through this swirl of world events, a pandemic, all kinds of things, and here we are now getting caught up. What's happened since 2018, Eric?
Oh my goodness. I seem to remember we got off stage in London, England at the O2 Arena on December 21st, 2019, and we told the crowd the same thing we say at the end of every show. It's never goodbye, it's just till next time, and we'll see you in 2020. And we didn't see anybody in 2020. And I don't think a lot of people saw a lot of people in 2020. Yeah, man, what a crazy time. Crazy time for the people of the world. I think it's been very unique and very interesting that for the first time in my lifetime, and I would imagine probably yours as well, where everyone in the world had a shared experience, which is, you can have people will say, well, world wars and whatnot, but yeah, the world wars weren't affecting certain people. They weren't affecting certain countries, maybe economically or something, but not in a real way. And this was the first time where the whole world was just put on hold and put on pause. And so I hope we will look back on it, not with fondness at all, but we will look back on it as maybe something that gave us some glue, as a society, as a world society, something that, we all shared something that meant something to all of us, and for better or worse. So, yeah, man, that and social upheaval. We talked a little bit about that prior to this, and the positive for me that came out of it is great art and great music from not only from Shinedown but from a lot of artists. So, no one had anything to do but create, and I think a lot of people took that opportunity to do so. So if there is a positive that we can take away from everything that's been going on, I think that the creatives have been hard at work. So.
Absolutely. Well, it's always been up to the musicians to put into words and sentiment and make visual the realities of what is happening at the time. And in, I'm going to say, better times, a lot of times that boils down to just interpersonal relationships. It could be like a love song or something, or I have a crush on somebody, or, I have my issues, whatever those are personally. But this has been such the bigger picture. And if we reflect on so much of the arts, so many huge pieces have come from moments like this where there was a huge event happening. And the thing that kind of comes to my mind, one of Pablo Picasso's work, Guernica, with the Spanish Civil War. This thing is just an extraordinarily powerful statement that those of us that were not present in that event can reflect back to and go, oh my gosh, this is, this elicits an emotion and a feeling. So as we look at that in this creative process that you guys have been involved with, as have we all, but you have created from this another album, your 7th studio album. Tell us about this.
Well, to your point, my very good friend Dino, who has also been my personal trainer in the past, he has a great way of putting it. We have a lot of great conversations about social issues and whatnot. And he says the musicians and the artists are the true keepers of history, and that the media is the mouthpiece of the powerful and the elite and that sort of thing. They're going to give you the viewpoint that needs to be given to them, but the artists are the people's mouthpiece. And Planet Zero, let's talk about the title. When we were writing, it was in the middle of a pandemic. We started writing in July of 2020, June or July of 2020, I forget when it was. But it was also right in the midst of the George Floyd riots and all of the upheaval that was going on. And I just started calling America Planet Zero. I was like, we have zero tolerance for each other. It seems like there's zero sense. There's zero ability to communicate. And so I just kind of nicknamed it Planet Zero. And we decided to write about Planet Zero and a potential future. Let's we kind of turned it into an actual planet and where we felt like we were headed. And that song itself is actually more geared toward cancel culture and shutting down each other's speech and thought because we don't agree with it. One of the beautiful things about being a human being is not agreeing on everything and not understanding each other's viewpoints and ideologies. And for me, and this is going to sound really woo-woo and kind of maybe a little spiritual, but I feel like that we we have to find a way to have real tolerance for each other and real tolerance for each other's way of thinking, and that we just shut down each other's ideas and thoughts, that we don't learn, we won't grow. And I don't have to agree with you to love you. Mm-hmm. I don't have to agree with everything you say. I don't have to think that I can think that you're vastly wrong about something, but we should go into our interactions with each other with love for each other as human beings. And so with Planet Zero, that was if we stop thinking that way and we let other entities kind of take over the way we think and how we process. Again, it seems to be something that gets talked about a lot these days, but big tech and media, and that sort of thing, just kind of telling everybody what to think. We're like cats with a laser pointer. They're like, well, today you should be concerned about this over here, and then tomorrow you should be concerned about this over here, and really dividing us into left and right, into racial pockets that we should only live here, and this is it's sort of the antithesis of how I feel like I was raised, and the antithesis of how I feel like my generation thought about things when I was younger, because we were all about don't see color, don't see each other as different groups. So we're all united. It was this united world thing that was happening, and now it seems like we're going the opposite direction. So with Planet Zero, it's a look at a potential future, in a dystopian kind of way, if we continue to let these things happen and let Big Brother, for lack of a better term, in an Orwellian sense, make decisions for us and tell us what to think and what to do and what we're allowed to do and say. And again, I think that's also the antithesis of what America is about. And so, that's sort of the song and the album kind of in a few words there. So.
Wow. And it is a huge undertaking. I mean, we've got a total of 20 tracks. Mm-hmm. But it's got, I'll call it the little blurbs in between the actual songs. And so it has a very sci-fi feel to it. The messages that are in there, I mean, it's heavy hitting. I mean, for example, No Sleep Tonight. The main thing with that tune is that you can't sleep through it because the tempo on this is absolutely crazy fast. I mean, it is like an alarm clock going off, ringing at you. Pay attention right now.
Yeah, so that song was Brent and I wrote the track to that, and then we actually finished the lyrics with our friend Dave Bassist, who we write with on every record. At some point, we're going to go write with Dave, because Dave he's the fifth Beatle in Shinedown and has been for years. When we're kind of tapped out, we go to Dave's house, and then he'll start bringing lyrical things out of us, which is great. I was like, why don't we see if we can write something just super fast? Like, what's the fastest Shinedown song that's ever been written, and also, but mixing it with these 80s keyboards. That was sort of the thing. I was like, I wonder at the chorus if I could do these 80s kind of synthesizer keyboards over this thrashy sounding thing. Like, anytime I'm creating, I'm always trying to figure out ways to combine things that shouldn't be combined in a way, or maybe some sounds that shouldn't go together, and not shoehorn them together, but actually make them work. So actually the synthesizer parts that were in that song gave birth to the intro to the record, which is 2184, and those keyboards are actually just those parts slowed down and made a little more epic and as an intro to a record. Mm-hmm. And 2184 is actually an homage to both to Orwell with 1984 and also to Van Halen 1984, which had the opening track on that is 1984, and it's a synthesizer piece, so that was sort of the homage with that. And speaking to the interlude tracks, we named her Siren, the woman who's speaking there. I actually made all of those pieces in 3 days, like music, words, everything. I just got to work because I'd had this idea. This is the most unintentional concept record ever, because we had the songs, a lot of the subject matter had to do with what we're talking about, but it wasn't really wrapped up in a bow. And I had this idea about having these synthesizer kind of futuristic sci-fi very 80s sci-fi, like something you would have seen on public television in the 80s, that kind of a feel happening, Doctor Who sort of thing happening between some of the songs. And then that evolved into, well, I should have this voice, so I just got to work on it, man. And when I was done with those things, it kind of became a concept record.
Yes.
Whereas initially there was no intention of that. So over the course of 3 days, it became a concept record, and here we are. It became a little more sci-fi. I just really wanted to play on the Planet Zero thing, and that led to Marco Bresti, who's a phenomenal artist, and he's been responsible for all of our album covers. And going to him with this Planet Zero idea, he came up with the great cover that we have, but also the alphabet. It was his idea. We have a Planet Zero alphabet in the record, and because originally I wanted to make some cryptic messages in the record on the inside of the cover, and I was just going to use binary. So I just written it out in binary, and he was like, well, what if we just did what if I came up with an alphabet? And like in a night, he came up with this whole alphabet. So those interlude pieces opened the door for really what the record ended up being, not only musically but visually, or conceptually and visually, I should say. So, and I think that the Siren says some really poignant things throughout that, and just about, we have a lot to lose, I think, as a world and as a country if we start shutting down freedoms. And I think that it's easy to say that not all speech should be free or something. Easy to say that because when you think about that, it sounds like a great idea. And no hate speech, it's well intended, and I feel the same way, that the intentions of that statement are valid and true, but put into practice, they can be used to shut everything else down.
Yeah.
And so you watch the dominoes start to fall. If you give a government the right to say, okay, well, hate speech is now illegal. Well, define hate speech. Well, hate speech could be anything at that point.
Sure.
And it could become something where, well, you criticize the president as hate speech. You vote against the president as hate speech. We can really get down that road. And it seems that, to people who maybe don't read history or don't study these things, that can seem very impossible, implausible, because in the world we live in now, where we really do live in a global society.
Yes.
It seems as though, we're socially evolved past and emotionally evolved past having, real dictators in place and whatnot. But look at what's going on in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
And you see that that's not the case. The world is rife with evil men, and whose hearts are vacant and would love to will do anything to control the world. And I know that sounds very, very, very Dr. Evil, but it's very true. So in essence, that's what we're talking about with this record, and with the character Siren. Siren is the big brother type, and she's telling you what you're allowed to do and what you can and can't do. She's very nice in the beginning. She gets a little less nice toward the end, and then, at the end of Army of the Underappreciated, which is the next to last song on the record, that's kind of where the concept ends, right? And you hear the listener shut her off, like she shuts off Siren, and you hear the switch get thrown. She dies, and then the last track on the record, What You Wanted, is more of a. I always think about it like the credits are rolling. It's like a commentary, at the end of, like, it's wrapping up everything you just listened to. So, yeah, again, unintentional concept record.
It is so different, because I can remember with Attention, the main thing you said is, this is not a concept record. And now, this is totally a concept record. And the references to Orwell and a lot of the sci-fi, which, again, I am a self-proclaimed nerd of epic proportion. When you consider, like, using a different lettering system, on my textbooks in college, I used Starfleet standard numeric, like you would see on the plate of the Enterprise. That was my student number, and people would pick up my books and go, they turn them the other way. They're like, what's with these numbers? They're not upside down.
All great sci-fi has its own languages and numbers, man. I mean, the Star Trek is rife with that stuff, man, with Klingon and Romulan and all of that, and the Star Wars with Erebesh and it's. I'm with you, man. I love the sci-fi. We can talk about that some other time. I can go deep into sci-fi.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and where I go with this, though, is that for the longest time, these creators of a potential dystopian future would have these ideas in their head, and they'd put them out there, and those of us that would consume them would go, okay, I see that, but that's not possible. That couldn't be. You know, like a Fahrenheit 451. No, people are not going to go out and burn our books, so we're not going to worry about that. But at this particular time, and with Planet Zero the way it's landing, there's a lot of really close to reality. Like, no, we're not just making up. This is a possible. This is a kind of an ongoing process. And when it comes to freedom of speech, I think one of the limiting factors pre-internet was that when you're face-to-face with somebody, you have actual skin in the game. So you go up to somebody and you say something hateful or stupid, you get your ass handed back to you because they are there. In the virtual world, it has enabled people to say the worst things or the most untrue things from the safety of some distance. They're untouchable, and you know, it goes without consequence to an extreme that you're going, how is this possible that this person can be saying this? Because otherwise, you know, like, again, those of us that grew up with other people, if you called somebody a name, they could come up and wail on you. And so you kind of learn, hey, it's not bright for me to call people names. But by the same token, this is also brought out so much in your face. You know, and again, we used to get together with all the different beliefs. You'd go, I don't know what my neighbor thinks or believes, and we're fine. We're neighbors. Yes. We live. I don't throw stuff at his house. He doesn't throw stuff at my house. But all of a sudden, a particular proclamation of the meaning of a flag, you know, and whether, you know, like if my neighbor were to fly a Nazi flag on the front of his house while I have my American flag on the front of mine, we've got some significant differences. Is probably, you know, not going to end well. But this has been so anonymous, which is so crazy because the internet has put this web around the whole planet. So now it's a shared experience.
Yeah, I think Mike Tyson said it best. He said the thing that keeps people respectful in person is the potential of an ass whooping. You know, and I think that the internet has just become, you know, like digital road rage. You know, it's like people will flip each other off feet away from each other because you've got these car windows between you. Yeah. You know, and the chances of that person stopping and doing something about it are very small. But you want to see a silencer is when someone stops the car, gets out, and then it's a whole other ballgame, right? People's tunes seem to change, you know, if someone gets out of the car. Myself included, I've had that happen. And I was like, hang on, man, I didn't want this. You know, I wasn't looking for this. Get back. I had a fellow one time, we just got done with a hurricane here, so there was no power. Everybody was kind of irritable. It had been a couple of days, and I was trying to cross an intersection with no lights, a pretty major intersection. I'm making sure, looking, and this dude just lays on his horn behind me, man. So I flipped him off. I was mad, and I started to go. Next thing I know, he's out of his car, banging on my. And this dude's like 75, but he was like one of those like 75-year-old dudes who's been to prison a lot, probably.
Oh no!
You know, and I turned it. I was like, "Oh, hang on, man." Didn't mean to flip you off, buddy. You know, because that's just not something I want a part of. You know, it was just a quick reaction. I'm going to keep going. But that's what's happened to us online. You know, there are no real consequences for that. And, you know, maybe there shouldn't be. Maybe there aren't, you know, but you really learn who people are. You know, you really, really do. And again, that's one of my biggest reasons why I'm a proponent of free speech is because I want to know who you are. Sure. If you are flying a Nazi flag, I want to know you're a Nazi. Yeah. So I know to stay away from you. You know? Yeah. And like that's really important in society because I think what you end up with when you demand people be on your side, you demand people shut up because you tell them to, or else there are going to be social consequences, meaning that, you know, I think I say it in one of the siren things, significant social judgment. If you don't change your behavior, you will be subjected to significant social judgment. And what you end up with that, I think, is you end up with people who you think are your supporters who aren't, right? What I'm saying is certain groups who demand that everyone be on their side, or else this is going to happen. Yeah. You know, you end up with, I call it, it's almost like a real-time hostage video. You end up with, you know, these people are like, you know, you're holding a gun to their head saying, metaphorically, you're holding a gun to their head saying, agree with me or else. And they're, okay, we agree with you, man. You're awesome. You know what? You're great. But in their heart, you've completely turned yourself, you turn them off to you. They don't really support you, and I find that sad. It's like, wouldn't you rather just allow the people who gravitate toward you and whatever your movement is or whatever, and have that be organic and be real, and you know who people are at that point, because that person you're holding the gun to, the metaphoric gun again to their head and saying agree with me, they might hate your guts, but they're going to say they agree with you, so you think that they're aligned with you, when in reality they don't like you at all. Well, I'd rather know if you like me or not. I'm not going to demand your compliance. I want a real read of the room. I've often said, when it comes to free speech, especially the people I don't agree with, should have a voice, because that is true free speech. Because I have again, go back to hate speech. I hear something abhorrent than someone says about a race of people or someone's sexuality or something like that. My reaction is, I'm mad. I don't agree with it. I don't understand it at all. So my tendency is to want to shut them down and force them to be quiet, legally or whatever, right? Sure. Well, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. And so what I mean, it doesn't mean that I agree with them. I vehemently disagree with all of that, full stop. Yeah. But when it comes to true free speech, they should be able to say what they want to say, and that is to everyone's benefit, as far as I'm concerned, because then you know who that person is.
We're absolutely clear. Yeah.
Yes, and I can stay away from you, and I can not support you.
Totally.
You've told me who you are.
And circling back, and as I'd mentioned, the opening track with the blistering lightning speed, but there's so much musicality in addition to message, because as a musician, I hear the music. The lyrics come to me after the fact, maybe if I listen 2 or 3 times, and I go, oh, they said this, to the point where I think a lot of, there was a Billy Joel tune, and we know how long ago he released a lot of his stuff, and I knew the whole musicality, I knew the changes, I know the whole thing, and then I listened to the lyrics, I'm like, whoa, that was really deep. I never knew that it said that. But the musicality with this, again, as this a concept album, it has such a variety, because it's not just all machine gun. There is acoustic, there's softer pieces. But they all fit in, so it's not, they don't stray away from, again, the kind of the main theme, but it is, again, I'm seeing in the progression as Shinedown is evolving with this. This really came together in such a lovely, seamless, developed fashion, So in the creative process, did you guys work in your studio again? How did this happen?
Yeah. So this is, I'm in Big Animal, which is a new studio from where we did Attention Attention. We did Attention Attention at Ocean Industries, which was my studio that I had for quite a number of years, almost 15 years. And my wife and I moved out to a piece of property out on Johns Island, South Carolina, and just decided that it didn't make sense we had enough space here to have a building here and have a studio here. So we shut down Ocean Industries, which broke my heart, because there was so much mojo in those walls of that place, man, and so much had been done there that I loved. We moved it here, and we wrote most of the record in this room that I'm sitting in now, and some of it out in California with Dave, but with the rest of it here, and did the demos in this room. Prior to it being the finished studio, this room was sort of a makeshift control room for a while, before it became a more proper sound-treated place. Yeah, and so we did the whole thing here, and it was interesting having the whole band and all the moving parts here at my house, which was interesting, because usually if it's at the studio, you can get away. You can come back to your house as your sanctuary. Well, your house becomes your workplace as well. It's a little different. There is no escape. But I appreciate the comment about the musicality, because one of the things we really wanted to do on this record that we hadn't done, it wasn't that we wanted to run the opposite direction of Attention, which is never, I'm so proud of that record. I love everything about it. But was to make something that was more raw, a lot drier, especially in the heavy songs. Like, there's not a lot of vocal reverbs, not a lot of drum reverbs. It's, drum room sounds, and then 1 or 2 of the heavy songs maybe have some reverb on the vocal every once in a while. But it's very dry, very in your face. And of course, some of the softer tracks need that to breathe and move. But I really wanted to put Brent's vocal front and center, not that it ever isn't, but but just very, you listen to the song Planet Zero, the way his verses sound. And that was sort of the genesis of that was when we recorded those vocals. Those vocals are also the vocals that are on the demo for the song. So they just sounded a certain way. And so we just really wanted to create this raw, more raw version of Shinedown, more real, more tangible, I guess, when you listen to it. It's almost like you can touch it and feel it. It's not so grandiose that you can't kind of hold it in your hand, I guess, is a way of putting it. But with that, I think the instrumentation comes out a lot more, and the musicality, the musicianship in a way comes out a lot more because it's. And another thing we did too is we didn't clean everything up. I mean, the guitar solo on No Sleep Tonight, there's that sweeping arpeggio right in the middle of it, and it's not very clean. It's there, but it's not super clean, and I love that. I love the fact that it was like, yeah, we're gonna, we can play like this, we can do this stuff, but it's, I think we did it on a Les Paul too, which is funny, sweeping arpeggio on a Les Paul. That might be why it is kind of sloppy. I love that. The guitar solo in the song called Dead Don't Die. The guitar solo in that is Zach playing with me working a whammy pedal, and I think we played it through. There are two solos, a middle solo and an end solo, and I think we played each solo through twice and just picked the one we liked the best. And they're missed notes and kind of doink strings and stuff all in them, but I love that for this record. I think it makes it very real. And the acoustic guitars too. I think these are some of the coolest acoustic guitar tones we've gotten, but they're very raw, and you're hearing a lot of string noise and you're hearing a lot of kind of fretted notes, but the things that make it. That to me is what the life of this record is.
Sure.
And to the bass, the bass on this record, I really wanted to make it part of the guitar tone. More so than just being a low end, holding down the low ends. Like there's a massive amount of mid range in the bass tone, on this record. And I wanted to hear the pick on the strings. I played a lot with the pick and then a lot with my fingers, but when I was playing with the pick, I wanted it to just grind in there with the guitar tones. But with that, you get the imperfections, and so. That to me is what's really nice about this record. I mean, the piano on a song called A Symptom of Being Human, that piano, that's prior to me getting the piano tune. That piano was so out of tune, but it has a vibe. It does a thing.
Yeah.
I moved the piano from Ocean Industries here and hadn't tuned it.
Oh.
So I just sat down and played it. Mike didn't play it, and it was like, I love the vibe of it, and so, making it, leaving the scars on, because that's kind of how we felt, in a way, sonically. The record sounds how we all felt after this pandemic and after all of this stuff. It's like we all have scars now. We all have, this glossy, perfect painting that we all lived in for so long. We didn't even realize we were living in until we weren't. It's now gone, and we've kind of been knocked down to our most bare parts. Emotionally, physically, everything. And so I think this record wears a lot of that.
Kind of almost is like there's a part of a Japanese philosophy, and raku is a pottery form that takes advantage of the uniqueness of imperfections. So when you're doing a raku piece, everyone always turns out different. You don't know what it's going to be, and it can be incredibly beautiful or it could be flawed, but it has the beauty in its flaws, and that is something that that energy comes through, and I appreciate hearing it. Now, since we're talking about sound, since we spoke the last time at one of the NAMM shows, you had a signature bass with Prestige guitars. Tell us more about how you've been getting your sound lately.
Oh man! So in the studio versus live, so to me they're two different beasts, and they have two different purposes. They have two different purposes. I always think that's why I love the fact that you're a bass musician. Because I bass players, I think, tend to have a more musician mindset a lot of the time than guitar players do, because guitar players are just all about their instrument, man. And not that bass players aren't, but bass players, because of the nature of what we do with our instrument, we provide support for songs most of the time. And there are some amazing bass players that can just shred all over the place, man. And I have so much respect for that. But I think in a lot of cases, bass players tend to go down this road of being more musicians and well-rounded musicians than just a bass player. Mm-hmm. And so I always cater everything I do to a song or to the performance if it's live, rather than this is my sound and this is what I do. When it comes to the studio, it's what bass tone is going to complement this song, what bass guitar, what bass amp, what DI box, whatever's going to compile that tone has to match the energy of the song and fit in the world that the song lives in. I'm not one of these guys that a lot of producers and engineers, when it comes to bass, will just track a DI, and then you just kind of figure it out later. I've never been a huge fan of that. I like to figure it out at the time, like what sounds good, what amp combination. I like to run a lot of guitar amps with bass amps. I run my JCM 800 heads that I run. I've got a JMP and a JCM 800 that I run a lot of my heavy guitars through. I use those on bass a good bit. In fact, the song Diamond Eyes off of it was on Sound of Madness re-release. That bass is entirely JCM 800. There's no DI. There's just a JCM 800 in front of a 412 guitar cabinet. So I like experimenting with things like that in the studio and finding the right thing. The bass I used mainly on this record was Gibson Thunderbird. Especially the pick stuff. I don't think there was anything picked that I didn't use the Thunderbird for. It just had the right sound, the right vibe for what we were doing. The stuff that I played with my fingers, I've got a 1974 P bass that Zach bought me for my birthday because I'd never owned a guitar in my birth year. So my birth year is 74, so he bought that for me, and I love it for that. And I have some sort of half flats on it, that I used for that. So those were kind of the two big workhorses on the record. Now live is a whole different thing, and I'm super proud of my Prestige bass. I modeled it after a 51P bass, Tele bass style, which I've always thought that's just the ultimate cool if you can play rock with one single coil pickup. Robert DeLeo is the one that kind of got me off on that kick. I remember seeing the video for Plush when I was a kid. And it came out, I think he was playing like a Tele bass or a 51P bass with that single coil. I was like, that is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen, And that never left me, Dusty Hill, like that whole thing, man. It just never, that never left me. And so I really wanted to create something like that. So we did. We put it's got a Seymour Duncan quarter pounder single coil pickup in it and Swamp Ash body with Pal Faro fretboard. Unless you get the all blonde version has a maple fretboard on it. But that thing sounds beastly live, man. It really does. And I have a bunch of J basses and stuff, and by the way, the neck on it too. The red neck radius is the J bass neck radius, which I always find super comfortable. I sometimes prefer a big baseball bat kind of neck, and I tried a couple of the prototypes with that, and I was like, I love this. People aren't gonna love this.
Yeah.
But I also love the J bass, And so I switched over to the J bass radius, and it worked out really, really well. I think we sell it with a bone nut on it. Live, I like brass nut. I like to have a brass nut on it. Brass nut's just a really hard thing to kind of mass produce. So we went with the bone nut on the ones that are sold, and the tone is very, very similar. There's not much difference, but I've always liked a brass nut just for sustain. Those things just sound so massive live. I've tried my J basses. I've tried the Thunderbird, and they just don't do whatever that bass is doing. There's that one single coil right down the middle, man. There's something about not having it too close to the bridge, not too close to the neck. It's just like right in the center. I love it. I can't recreate it with anything else, which is great. But it's such a utilitarian bass for live. Again, I can shut off that guitar rig that I run live, and I'll get more into that. I run a bass rig and a guitar rig. So the guitar rig is my distortion, and then I turn that off and on as I need it. But as soon as I turn that off, it's just warm and big, and for the more mid-tempo ballady stuff that I don't need that tone, and then I can grab a pick, and crank that guitar rig on, and it's just that nice mid-range is just eating your face. And I love that. So I couldn't be more proud of that instrument, and a lot of my, I would say all of the companies that I deal with, whether it's Ampeg, who I play, Mojo Tone, who I use for my guitar heads, Prestige, of course, SIT strings, Radial, I use them for all my switching, Dunlop, I've got a relationship with them as well. All of these companies I like being with because of Seymour Duncan as well, by the way. I love being with them because of the people. I'm a people person at the end of the day. Anybody can throw a slab of wood into a CNC machine and make a guitar that sounds good. Make a bass that sounds great. But who are you dealing with, and who are the people you're working with? And so Prestige is just, it's a very small operation, great people. Actually, it started out as a wood supplier, so they supply a lot of the wood to a lot of other guitar companies, Canadian company. But they decided to I think, they bought the Prestige name and started making Prestige guitars again a few years ago, and they're just such good quality instruments, man. I can't say enough about the guitars as well. Like the necks just always feel so good on them. So again, great company. I couldn't be more proud of what we made. There's kind of an oxblood red color that has black binding on it, which I've actually got sitting behind me here. I don't know, I can't reach it, but it's back there. And then we've got a flat white with mother of pearl binding and pickguard, and then there's the just the raw finish with the maple fretboard, and that's probably my favorite. I love the raw finish one. But we're super proud of that, man. But when it comes to my tone live, I honestly always start at kind of the same place. I like to go talk to our front of house guy. I'm like, what do you need from me to make this sound monstrous? What do I need to do? Do I need to change something? Is there something that you don't like? Because that's so often a thing that never gets addressed with bands is, that guy in front of house is your delivery system. Everything has to channel through him to make you sound great. And whether you're playing in a club, whether you're playing in an arena, and anytime we change rooms, I'll even ask him, like, hey, do I need to do anything? Like, if we're doing a theater tour, it's different than an arena. A festival or a stadium is different than a club, so you have to kind of cater what you do. And I have no qualms about changing something that needs to be changed. In fact, I got a Dunlop wah pedal, and I got a set of 3 of them, just one, a main and a couple extras to have on tour. And I plugged it in, all of a sudden my tone just sounded beastly. I was like, oh my God, this wah pedal is awesome. But we plugged the other wah pedals and they wouldn't do that. And so there was something specific and unique about this wah pedal that I got, and come to find out, just doesn't happen with Dunlop very often, but something had gotten wired. The off switch had been bypassed.
Okay.
So it was always on, and it was always on like this. So it was adding this like 100 to 80 bump, in the bottom end. It was like, so I left it in, and I kept that for a while. This is prior to our current front of house engineer, a gentleman named Andy Meyer, who's a badass. I mean, he's run sound for everybody from Rage Against the Machine to Justin Timberlake, but I loved the way it sounded. But he came to me and he's like, hey man, let's talk about this, whatever's going on with this pedal. He's like, it's causing me to have like a governor in front of house. Like, I can't get what I need sub-wise out of your bass, because basically when you cut that wah pedal on, it rolls everything off up to a point, So anything kind of below 80, he's not getting, and so, because it's on the front end. And so I was comfortable with the way it sounded, but I changed it and actually got my monitor engineer, Chris Lightcap, to adjust it in my ears where it still sounded kind of similar. But that gave Andy what he needed to make our band sound better, and make my bass sound better. That's how I approach everything live. I'm not so married to the way that my tone is, or that my sound is. My tone is here, right?
Yeah.
It's going to sound like me kind of no matter what, So what does he need to make me sound great and to make our band sound great? And that's how I approach everything live. So to me, it's always about, people don't care what your bass tone is. People don't care what the bass tone is on a record necessarily. They just want to feel something.
Exactly.
They want an experience, whether they're listening to a record or they're listening to you play and coming to see your band play. So what do I need to make people feel something? And that's kind of the attitude that our entire band takes with everything. I really think, like, it might be why we're not seen as, these technically proficient musician types, because we always have a saying, it's like, well, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Sure.
And so we can play, we can shred, I can shred all day long, but should you? I don't know. Depends on what the song wants, and so we give ourselves these interludes during the show when Brent's talking. We noodle a little bit during those parts of the show. It's kind of a good release, because we're still musicians at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You still want to show off on your instrument. So but yeah, that's my philosophy on tones and sound in general is just, what do you need to deliver something to the listener?
Very cool. Well, and since you're mentioning touring, as we speak, we're coming hopefully towards what we're thinking is the light at the end of the tunnel.
We hope.
Now, again, it's like the phrase, just as I thought I was out, they sucked me back in. That is always subject to change, and I think we've learned this over the last year more than anything, because things were starting to open up, and then things are closing again, and so forth. But what plans? I know that the Revolution Live Tour is in the works.
Yeah. So as we speak, let's see. I'm trying to think of where I am in time right now and where I am when people are seeing this. Right now, I'm getting ready to go out on tour with the Pretty Reckless and with Diamante. But by the time people see this, that would have already happened. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
I hope we didn't suck. I hope it was fun. We are bringing a bigger show than we've ever done. We always say that, but it's true. Like Zach and Brent, Zach Myers, our guitar player, and Brent Smith, our singer, of course, designed the live shows, and they're really good at it, man. And I don't think visually like that with things. So we've got this amazing, insane stage show that we're bringing to everywhere but festivals. Festivals won't have that stage set up, but all shows that aren't festivals will. And we're super excited about it. I think that by the time I'm talking now, we're in the middle of a tour with Jelly Roll, I believe. And so that's the same thing. So we're just super excited about this show, man. It's so different than anything we've ever done. And, you know, we really try to think outside of the box when it comes to live shows and what we're delivering. We want to deliver an experience. Again, we want people to want to come back, and the people who have come back not see the same thing they've seen already. And I think that after this, we're headed to Europe. So for the end of the year. So we're going to be doing some shows in Europe before the end of the year. So that's the plans right now. And then we will hit 23 with the, you know, with on all cylinders.
On the run, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and as always, if people want to know where to look, how to find out if you're going to be in a town near them, shinedown.com, best place to look.
Shinedown.com, at Shinedown on Twitter and on Instagram. I think we have a TikTok. I don't dance on the TikTok, but I think it's there. We're pretty active on the social media. We've got a great social media team that when I don't feel like doing it, makes me do it anyway. So, or us rather. Yeah, we're pretty active on those things. So you always know what's going on.
Very cool. Well, Eric, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule from your lovely studio.
Thank you, Raul.
Folks,
I appreciate it.
You've seen him here, Eric Bass on Bass Musician Magazine.